Okay.
All right. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us for another Eastern Connecticut Symphony Orchestra pre-concert chat. And this time we are previewing the March 19th concert at the Gard Arts Center, 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday. And I'm joined here by two delightful people. One that our audience knows very well, our music director and conductor, Toshiyuki Shimada. And then also a new face to the orchestra, and I hope a new friend, our guitarist, soloist, Jason Vieaux. Thank you guys for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
Great to have you, Jason.
Thank you.
We've been, of course, expecting your appearance for more than 2 years, I guess. So delighted that we have opportunity to perform with you. So what audience would like to know is something about yourself. You have a great biography. And then about the specific piece that we are going to perform, which is Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez. And then we have some questions to ask you. So
Okay.
I've rarely able to perform with Grammy artists, so I mean, quite excited. But how has that award changed your life?
I think it. I think for me, just from my perspective, it was. I mean, from a music business side of things, I think we were for a while until, of course, the pandemic. I mean, we were able to maybe see a little bit of increase in the fees, but I think in terms of a lot of other things. I mean, there was also just more. There was more concerts. I would think for about 3 or 4 years after that. Like I said, leading up to the pandemic, we were able to take more things, and then I did make a couple connections. I think to a couple musicians, soloists, conductors. It definitely. I think the Grammy name and the idea of it. It was, of course, a great honor to win it. But beyond that, I think as a professional musician, it kind of opened some doors that for someone like myself, I mean, it's really it's really helpful. I can't just kind of pick up the phone and necessarily call somebody if I want to collaborate with them. I mean, it's more the way I think things work in classical music is that there has to be the way I always came about those relationships was just that we ended up really becoming friends or colleagues first, and then you sort of try something together. It sort of occurs to both of you that you can maybe have a collaboration. The thing with the Grammy is that you can kind of, you can sort of cold call people, I guess, if you want, and then there's that thing attached to it, to your name or your brand or whatever you want to call it, or allows you a little bit, I suppose, access. I didn't really do too much of taking advantage of it because, again, I was so busy. I was already at the beginning of my family with my wife. My son was 1 year old at the time, and I had already kind of given up, actually, in a way, on something like the Grammys. I just didn't. It was a total shock, and it came at a very unexpected time. Like I said, I'd already been in the business for a long time, well over 20 years, and so at that point, I mean, I definitely, without mentioning any names, I definitely had the confidence. But I already knew those people that I contacted, and there may be some future projects that come out of those things. And then I was approached by other people, by more people, and I guess it's just kind of a professional thing where, there's just more people that are interested, I think, in what you're doing. So that part of it is great, of course.
Certainly, you have made your manager very happy to make it.
Yeah, I think it probably makes her job easier, and then more busy in a way.
It's a great endorsement of music field anyway. So this kind of a obvious question that a lot of people would like to ask is that, when did you start on the guitar?
Well, that was growing up there. My mother, when I was 5, had brought home a guitar, like a $50 guitar, and it just so happened that it was, I think she unwittingly, brought home a classical guitar. nylon strings, not steel, thick, wider neck. It was a kid-sized guitar, like 3/4 or 2/3 or something like that. And I just sort of knocked around on it because we really didn't know anything. I mean, my background is not exactly. It's more rooted in kind of machine shops and brass factories and Laker boats and stuff like that. The Great Lakes, kind of the Laker boats.
Yeah.
I've said in other interviews, I come from a long line of coal passes and stuff like that. So, but my mother was a secretary and for a while she kind of hopped around for different jobs. And one of the jobs was at my elementary school. She was there for a few years, and she was the secretary to the library. And when I was 7, the Buffalo Guitar Quartet came and did an outreach program. And I certainly at the early parts of my now almost 30-year career, I've done, hundreds upon hundreds of outreach programs over those years. And but there were these kind of long-haired guys with beards. This is 1980, I guess, or something like that, and with tuxedos on, 4 guitarists, and playing like Ravel and Darius Milhaud and Debussy and John Dowland and classical era arrangements, all on classical guitar. They were really quite fine ensemble. They started in 1976, actually, 8 years before the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet.
Oh yeah,
they were one of the very first. I started lessons that summer with Jeremy Sparks, who was their primary arranger. So he was like a really well-rounded musician, could write, arrange, really knew how music was put together. And so I think a lot of my initial background was not just in classical guitar training. My initial lessons with him, starting around like right after my 8th birthday, was that, but also just kind of like when you're studying with somebody like that, it's that does the ranging and writes and stuff like that. I don't know. I think a lot of that sort of rubbed off on me at a young age. We played a lot of duets together too. So a lot of my early sort of chamber music training and sort of listening to another person whilst playing after learning your part was really in my bedroom, like with those lessons with my teacher.
It's great. Now you're holding a beautiful instrument right now, and I'm so curious what kind of a guitar this is.
Well, this one's just practicing some of the repertoire right now. Because again, in this 3-month period, it's like the way the reschedules fall is however they fall, and so I'm practicing a lot every day. But this instrument is by a German luthier based in Frankfurt named Gernot Wagner. And so yeah, it's a wonderful, it's incredibly versatile instrument. Like I can play like I do a lot of guitar and string quartet stuff with the Escher String Quartet, and a lot of that stuff that we play I don't really require amplification for, which is really nice not to have to lug that stuff around. Or with orchestra, it's always nice to bring an amplifier and to make sure that is that just kind of covers your bases. But there have been a lot of instances with this guitar where, like with Gerard Schwartz every summer at EMF at the Eastern Music Festival, he and I do a guitar concerto every year.
Oh, fantastic!
During those 2 weeks that I'm there with the guitar program that I started there, that he brought me on to that festival to do the guitar program. And he insists that we're not going to use amplification. So he's really like keen on getting everybody to play with their sound, but to play down as much as possible. So it's a really good instrument in that respect, in that it really helps the player in a lot of situations, particularly in the lower end. A lot of the low end gets lost, like in Aranjuez, like stuff like like those lower scales, and this guitar actually you can really hear those things in addition to passages like that where you're playing. The thing with the guitar, it's kind of like a harpsichord in the sense that it gets louder the more notes you play, the more strings you're playing simultaneously. Obviously, it has more of a dynamic range than the harpsichord, but its dynamic range in the upper end is very limited, right? You can only play it so loud.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of the first thing to go with the orchestra. If you're not using the amplifier, is the bass strings, right? So, but this guitar actually does a very good job on its own with that. But I'll have an amplifier on call there just to get so we get the balance right when we need and play.
So while we're on the topic of your instrument, it might be interesting to note to some of our people who I'm sure most people have experienced an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar, the differences between nylon classical and a regular guitar, because obviously there's quite a few. So if you want to just kind of summarize why it's different and how it's different a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when we think of a guitar, I think when most people see this kind of blonde wood with no wires or any kind of, not a lot of hardware on it, we kind of think of, we kind of think of like a James Taylor riff, or whatever. You kind of think of the guitar is actually a really great, accompaniment for just a single singer accompanying themselves. Like a troubadour would have been in the 14th century, with their plucked instrument and this sort of thing. So it does, function that very well. But the difference between a classical guitar and those kind of guitars, a steel string guitar, what some people call a folk guitar or acoustic guitar, this is also an acoustic guitar, but there's not even really anything on the bout for a strap. We don't really play with a strap. We're not standing, we're sitting. And then also the strings are made of nylon, not steel. So that's what that we have that sound is very.
The attack is so rounded.
Yeah, it's like a
Beautiful.
softer sound. You can make it not so soft with color. Like I could play. You get with color and with articulation, you can inflect those same notes with a completely different meaning, like a completely different feeling, completely different character. But that's more a function, of course, of your ear, just like any other classical music instrument. Your ear, and in our case, our right hand. Our right hand is kind of like the microphone or the thing that projects the sound. And then also, like for the sorry, I'm just kind of sitting cross-legged, which I don't really do when I play, but the neck is also wider and than a steel string kind of thing that a singer-songwriter or a rock musician would use. And the reason for that is we play a lot of stuff like this, so on and so forth. So we're playing like that's a violin. That's one of the Bach violin sonata fugues, which is written with 3 and sometimes even 4 voices. Sorry, I should have brought my footstool for this. I can't hear this, but
Beautiful.
I might kind of like with my legs crossed, like a singer-songwriter might be actually.
Exactly.
And that stuff is a lot harder to play than. But so again, because we're playing a lot of polyphonic music and arrangements of like the famous kind of things of like Albani's, because you're playing all those voices at the same time, which is not really what the guitar was originally designed for, really, if you think about it. It's the wider neck actually accommodates the left hand fingers and the right hand covering all those voices at the same time. It's kind of like the classical guitar is actually kind of a hybrid, if you will, of a piano and a string instrument, like a cello. It's kind of in a tenor range like the cello, but it has these polyphonic capabilities the way a keyboard would have. Is kind of the way I think of it. But we can also vibrato.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Like a piano can't do that, but a piano can of course do a lot more.
The vibrato also looks very different than what people might be used to seeing on a guitar, because the vibrato you're doing is really it's lateral, and versus going up and down perpendicular to the neck.
Oh, like in rock playing, yeah, like, because yeah, they don't go left to right. They do this, which actually, when you're doing that, we're going either this way or even the opposite way. The pitch goes only sharper. Mm-hmm. So with classical playing, of course, the same way we're mimicking, we're trying to do kind of like what a string player would do, which is sharper, flatter, sharper, flatter, sharper, flatter, sharper, flatter to the principal note. And they do it really just by rolling. You're kind of rolling the hand because they don't have the frets. The thing on a guitar is you actually have to grab the string, push toward the bridge to make it flatter, and then pull toward this.
Now the Rodrigo. So you have given us a little bit taste of the second movement of Rodrigo, Concierto de Aranjuez. I understand that the Rodrigo didn't play guitar.
Yeah, he sure didn't.
He wished he had been able to vibrate his key. But how is it? I mean, as a guitarist playing this piece, I mean, with your complete knowledge on the guitar instrument, you think it's well written for the guitar player?
Oh, it's well written. I mean, it's well written because, I mean, musically, I think the piece is just so effortless sounding. It's really incredible, especially the second movement. But what a lot of people don't know that that Rodrigo didn't play the guitar. He was a pianist. Is a lot of it, especially the first and third movements, in its original writing of it, was not terribly idiomatic to the instrument. Like it's actually really, the outer movements sound pretty, nice, and there's a lot of scales in it, of course, or these kind of things, but those sections, of course, are quite idiomatic. But there's just a lot of blind sort of jumps, if you will, like a lot of leap of faith jumps, particularly in the third movement, that are really, really quite challenging. It's a lot of my most advanced students that would play Aranjuez, they learned it when they were younger, but never got a chance to play it either with an orchestra or even with a piano. So when they get to Curtis or Cleveland Institute of Music, they're often shocked at what they thought was a tough solo guitar part, but with practice, it's manageable. They make the mistake of preparing it like it's a solo piece, right? Sometimes, right? Not all of them, but sometimes they do. And they're shocked when they have to play it with a pianist because those outer movements it's like what I kind of think of in a classical sense, more in a classical way than say in a non-classical way. But they're still in a pocket. Like you guys, the whole ensemble, you have to play as a chamber musician. So rather than the orchestra coming to the soloist, it's really the best chance for the best success of a performance is that the soloist can make adjustments and these kind of micro fine adjustments to where the pocket is in the orchestra, and that makes it very challenging when you're kind of throwing your hand like up 10 positions and this and that in the outer movement. So yeah, it's always a challenge. I mean, at this point I played it probably somewhere around 200 times in my career. And so that now it's more of a thing where it really just, your spots. I call it my most wanted list, like the most wanted, spots that I've got to hit. Probably, most of my practice is spent on that,
It's an interesting piece. I mean, it starts like the first movement is flamenco like.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. This is straight out of like Spanish guitar playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can almost hear the palmas with it.
Yeah, I know. If you hear
flamenco tune, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I mean, that's Rodrigo really imagining kind of this odd meter or this kind of compound meter time signature thing, but really a 16th century court, kind of court band. So it has, and that's very Rodrigo in general, and in most of his composing, is this kind of combination. I always kind of think of it. He's trying to take this kind of Stravinsky-an modernism with minor seconds and minor ninths, major sevenths, and this kind of thing, like the sort of these color notes that really make the music bite a little bit with dissonance. And so it has these modernist touches, but most of his music is really quite tonal and often harkening back or sort of recollecting a time from what we would think of as the Baroque era of music or the Renaissance era in a lot of cases of music. So there's this kind of meeting of like, two completely different eras.
Of course, the second movement.
Yeah.
The second movement is just
It's one of the most popular things in the 20th century for classical.
Yeah, many musicians adapted for some other instruments too. And
Miles Davis, Chick Corea.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin used to play in sort of their long sort of jam sessions in their 70s tours. They would play it. Yeah.
But
I was going to say that it's kind of the perfect piece for you because you're such a well-rounded and eclectic player that it seems like this has a little bit of everything inside of it. And just like with your career, you played with a lot of different collaborators. You already mentioned the Escher String Quartet, Yolanda Condonasis, and the NPR, and the album that you've done there. And it seems like you've ranged all over the place. Pat Metheny music, and modern composers like Jeff Beal and Leshnoff, and it's just
and I used to
phenomenal to see that.
Thank you. Yeah, and Davidovsky and lots of the kind of the avant-garde modernists of the sort of coming out of the Pierre Boulez. I mean, I feel like every guitarist, if they can kind of handle it, they should really go through that Le Marteau sans Maître gauntlet of the Pierre Boulez.
Yeah, but you've also played like Fazil Size piece.
Yeah, a lot of it. That's great.
Yeah,
nobody really mentions that anymore. Yeah, he wrote a concerto that he wanted to get played and he hadn't got it, so I ended up giving the premiere here in Maryland, like in Frederick, Maryland somewhere.
Yeah. So then I've got Toru Takemitsu's piece, of course, and you play.
Yeah. I love all that stuff. I mean, I just can't play it all in one season, so it's kind of for many years though I was like 8-9 years of repertoire.
Bring you back many times, and you have to play all this with your favorites.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. That sounds great.
That's great.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you taking the time and getting to know you. And I encourage our audience to listen to all the different works that you've done, because you have a very extensive discography and really interesting videos, from the NPR videos onto any of the other number of collaborations we've talked about. So we'll direct them all to your website to kind of see all your different works and see what you have coming up, because we heard about you from one of our very, very dedicated volunteers who's a super fan. And she's the one who really said, we have to bring Jason Vieaux. And, so you have this word of mouth group of people that seem to just travel for you all over the place, which is also, I think, kind of unique to you as a performer as well. So we're really glad that our paths are crossed.
I'm so thankful for those fans. I mean, it really, you definitely get this kind of sense that something's happening there. And so, I appreciate that. By the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I just found out that my next solo album, which is Bach Volume 2, The Violin Works, is coming out actually April 1st, actually earlier than I had thought. So that's actually going to be coming out in a month. And then, if the listeners want to check out something more recent of mine, the Pat Metheny, the piece that Pat Metheny wrote for me is on a Pat Metheny album from last year called Road to the Sun. So they can check that out. And then also in May, Annie Kiko Myers and I are releasing our first duo record together. So yeah, lots of, I mean,
busy man.
Lots of stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track of it all. So.
Well, we appreciate you sketching out a little bit of time for us today, and we are so excited to meet you in person and to hear this piece in person. Any last words, Toshi?
Well, I'm really looking forward to have you next to me on the stage.
I look forward to working with you. This is going to be a lot of fun. And I've been to all over Connecticut.
Yeah?
Over the years. I've probably been to like 25 cities in Connecticut. I've never been to New London. So this is going to be fun.
Okay.
Nice. We'll give you a nice tour.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks again.
Bye, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye.